Hello everyone and welcome to a new video from Your Overwatch. I'm Eddie the Chump and today we'll be talking about a concept I've been thinking about since the most recent PTR experiments and the latest patch which came out this week. And it's what I call the death of the Deathball. Okay, so I'm not suggesting that the Deathball as a concept has completely disappeared, but I think it has been amended. I think Ana makes a huge difference and I'll get into that right now. The first subject I want to look at is the support changes. Okay, so Lucio isn't an auto pick anymore and this is for many reasons which I'll get into later. It's also important to realize that Ana doesn't actually take part in the Deathball unlike a Lucio or a Mercy. Mercy's role has kind of changed now. She's more of a pocket buff heal for your most important DPS. She doesn't always get like a full Deathball res on anymore. So you've heard us talk about value before as a concept. Well, Mercy's value has gone down a tiny bit. She's still good, but she's not as monstrous as she was before. Zen has limited the tank's effectiveness. Rhine isn't an auto pick anymore. D.Va's kind of taken over a lot of the tank roles. And this is to do with the larger concept of what's happening in the meta. The reason why the Deathball now is more sort of a specific strategy than a more generalized way that you should play the game is because of all these different factors working together. The changes to the support, the changes to DPS, the importance of flankers now. I'd just like to take a moment to talk about Genji and Tracer. In the last meta, they were actually used quite sparingly. It was actually unusual to see them, and even amongst ourselves on the channel, when we'd play against a team that had like a 3-tank setup, Uyghur wouldn't use Genji anymore. It's his favorite character, it's the character he's best with, but it didn't suit what we were playing against. The same goes for Tracer as well. I quite like Tracer as a character and I'm glad that she's got the room she needs to work, and that's kind of my main point about what's happening in the game. The action is just like spreading out, just elongating a little bit. There's a little bit of space that these flankers can occupy now, and actually the chip damage that they're doing and the picks that they're getting mean an incredible amount. So when I say death of a Deathball, what I really mean is the entire game has stretched out and it's become way more dependent on picks. Now, picks were always important in the previous metas, it's not like I'm presenting anything new, but as I said in the previous video, with the knives being sharpened, I kind of like that term. Each pick has a huge amount of importance, especially on defense. So if you're pushed up too far and you get punished and you get killed and you're singled out and your team's 5v6 on defense, those flankers that have killed you, have got that early pick, can move on to the rest of your team while their team pushes up. If you think about it, if you ran a Genji and a Tracer, that's a third of your team not playing in the Deathball. And you have to apply that to other characters too. If you take a Widow or you take an Ana or if you take both, that's another third not in the Deathball. So what's left? Another support maybe one tank. Xayah is obviously still really popular. She's still got a lot of utility, a lot of value in what she does. But that elongating, that stretching, the creating of space means that getting that first pick is just gold dust. Another thing to think about is, I'm just going to expand the point I made about Mercy earlier. If the game is stretched out like that, and characters aren't all bunched up together, and in fact there's a few team fights going on at once, any res effectiveness that she had before is immediately lessened. She's just not able to res as many people as she did before. Now that obviously varies from game mode to game mode, but you really notice it on payload. The only place that I really see her do those absolutely huge clutch plays is on like the last point. Then when both teams are kind of squished together by the map, that's where she still has huge utility. And in that way you can say that the Deathball still exists. I'm not saying it's completely died, I'm just saying that it's lessened so. So what's replaced the traditional Deathball? Well actually, the concept of team fighting on any part of the map still exists. It's just not your traditional Reinhardt at the front, DPS behind him and the defense is in a set position in front of you. It doesn't really work like that now, especially if there's a Zenyatta in play. Zenyatta can really make Genji and Tracer incredible picks. So what's a more likely scenario now? Well, most teams now will either have a Genji or a Tracer, sometimes both. And as is common in Overwatch, we see a lot of mirrors, a lot of teams setting up kind of the same to try and counter each other. If a team takes a flanker setup against you, that means that they are weaker in their back line, but it also means that you are. So there's sort of segmented team fights going on. It's really quite interesting, and it actually means in a lot of ways that skill can win out. But is the Deathball completely gone? Obviously Ana's ultimate turns Rhine into a bit of a raid boss. That's kind of different. Yes, he's the spearhead still, but I still find it kind of funny to see this giant orange monster running towards me with his team running in behind. And I mean, that really is a Deathball. So it's in the game, but it's less general. It's more specific. It's like a play. It's not the default that you do. Actually, the default has changed to, let's play a bit cagey and see who gets the first pick. Let's see if our DPS can get a pick. And that will inform how your team applies pressure. Who's the loser in this scenario? Well, for a long time, Junkrat had huge importance in the meta, especially if they were taking like a generic Reinhardt setup. In infinite spammable splash damage projectiles. It's not uncommon for a good Junkrat to get 20,000 damage in a match, like on a payload map. But actually, because everything's so stretched out, is he as relevant anymore? I don't think he is. And that's not to say that he can't be useful or that skilled players with Junkrat can't perform well. It's just that by the nature of the game, does his kit really do enough now? People are too spread out. Another hero I'd like to mention is Lucio. Lucio for the longest time was as close to an automatic pick as you could get, maybe arguably tied with Mercy. But now he's really useful for like a speed boost Deathball on like the last point. And that's what people use him for. They use him for like ultimate stacking. That's quite often in conjunction with your flankers also executing at the same time. How do you feel the game's changed? Do you like the way it is now? Do you like that the action's more spread out? Or do you prefer the more uniform Deathball set play style that we saw in the previous metas? If you like the video, please don't forget to leave a rating. If there's anything you'd like us to talk about specifically, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. I've been Eddie the Chump, and until next time.